My name is Pam Bondi. I'm not a politician. I'm not a journalist. I'm just a data analyst from Minnesota who stumbled onto something I was never supposed to see. It started with an audit. I was working late one Friday night, combing through federal grant disbursement data, something I'd done 100 times before. My job was to flag inconsistencies in housing development grants tied to nonprofit groups in the Midwest. That's when I noticed something odd. A single organization, Nurture Nexus Initiative, had received over $312 million across 3 fiscal years. More than double the combined amount of all similar programs in the state. And nobody seemed to be watching them. Their address was a UPS drop box in Minneapolis. At first, I figured it was just sloppy record-keeping. But something made me dig deeper. Their supposed projects, affordable housing units, mental health clinics, food aid programs, none of them existed. I drove to the sites. Empty lots. Boarded-up buildings. One clinic was actually an abandoned auto body shop. The paperwork, though, immaculate. Over 100 forged inspection certificates, thousands of fake beneficiary reports, all signed off by the same 2 names, Rami Hassan and Ilhan Omar. At first, I hoped, it was just a coincidence. That someone was fraudulently using Congresswoman Omar's name to rubber stamp approvals. But then I found the video. Buried in a deleted server backup, timestamped 2 years ago. Security footage from a private fundraiser. She was there. Laughing with Rami. Talking about how they'd beat the system clean. The quote burned into my brain, they'll never see it coming. We feed them numbers, they feed us checks. I reported everything to my supervisor. By Monday morning, my office was empty. Badge access revoked. Personal laptop seized. No explanations. That's when I knew, I was in danger. I went home that Monday with a pit in my stomach. My apartment door was slightly ajar. Inside, everything looked untouched, except my bookshelf. The binder I used to keep project notes, the one with backup USB drives tucked in the back pocket. Gone. That night, a black Lincoln sat idling across the street. Engine running. Headlights off. I didn't sleep. By Tuesday morning, I'd moved to a motel in St. Paul under a different name. I used burner phones. Public Wi-Fi. I reached out to everyone I trusted, friends, former co-workers. Most didn't answer. One of them finally called me back and whispered through clenched teeth, "Pam, stop. You're poking a wasp nest. These people don't just fire you, they erase you." But I wasn't about to disappear quietly. I reached out to an old contact from college, a hacker named Levi. Together, we dug deeper. He got into servers hosted overseas, masked IPs, dark web mail drops. The deeper we went, the dirtier it got. We uncovered a full laundering operation using shell charities in Somalia, Turkey, and a fake medical research foundation registered in South Dakota. Money was being funneled through crypto wallets, bounced between fake contractors, and ending up in luxury real estate in the UAE. And all roads led back to Ilhan Omar. She wasn't just signing off on these deals. She was orchestrating them. One document changed everything. A signed authorization, on congressional letterhead, greenlighting a $42 million grant for a non-existent youth program. Next to her signature, a note in cursive, for Rami. Run this through Nexus fast. We now had her dead to rights. So we went public. Levi built a site called Truth Conduit. We published the files, the videos, the forged documents, everything. It exploded overnight. Hashtags like #OmarGate and #NexusScam trended worldwide. And then came the subpoena. The Department of Justice. The FBI. Congressional oversight. This time, they couldn't ignore it. By the end of the week, Ilhan Omar was on live TV, flanked by lawyers, denying everything. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The House Ethics Committee opened an emergency investigation. And then, an anonymous juror leaked the unthinkable: a secret grand jury indictment had already been handed down. It took 5 black SUVs to bring Ilhan Omar to the courthouse. The crowd outside the federal building in D.C. was electric, some furious, some in denial, some just hungry to see a spectacle. Reporters were packed shoulder to shoulder. Protesters shouted on both sides. A man in a Guy Fawkes mask held up a sign that said, "Truth is a trial." It felt more like a movie premiere than the beginning of the largest political fraud case in decades. Inside, it was all real. No scripts. No edits. Just facts, witnesses, and a storm of panic behind the defense table. The charges? Wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, money laundering, obstruction of justice, racketeering under RICO statutes. The government's case was ironclad. Over 8 terabytes of evidence. Financial records traced across 19 countries. Testimony from former aides, IRS agents, and even a whistleblower accountant from Nurture Nexus, who came forward after our leak went viral. The prosecutor's opening line said it all: "This isn't about politics. It's about betrayal. A betrayal of trust, of office, and of every taxpayer in this country." They played the video. The fundraiser. Her laughing with Rami. That line, "We feed them numbers, they feed us checks." The room went dead silent. When they called me to the stand, my hands were shaking. I swore in, heart pounding. The prosecutor asked me one question: "Why did you come forward?" I looked straight at the jury and said, "Because I couldn't unsee it. And neither should anyone else." Omar's defense? Denial. She claimed she was set up. That her signature was forged. That she didn't know Rami Hassan beyond casual political circles. But the money trail didn't lie. Neither did the emails. Or the offshore condo in Dubai purchased in her cousin's name, paid for in full with Nexus grant funds 2 days after approval. Then Rami flipped. Mid-trial, he took a plea deal. Agreed to testify. And when he did, he dropped the final bomb: Ilhan was the architect. I just built the scaffolding. She knew every wire transfer, every fake project. She signed off on everything. It took the jury 6 hours. 6 hours to weigh the mountain of evidence. 6 hours to decide the fate of a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, accused of orchestrating the largest fraud scheme in Minnesota's political history. I waited in the hallway, surrounded by murmurs, the smell of burnt coffee, and the nervous clatter of journalists refreshing their feeds. Then the doors opened. The courtroom went silent as the foreman stood. In the matter of United States v. Ilhan Omar, we, the jury, find the defendant. He glanced at her. Her expression was unreadable. Guilty. On all counts. Gasps. Cameras flashed like lightning. Someone shouted, "Justice," before being removed by security. Ilhan Omar sat still. Frozen. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She didn't blink. The judge banged the gavel and set the sentencing date. She was remanded into custody immediately, no bail. As marshals escorted her out, she finally turned, eyes sweeping the room, and for a split second, landed on me. She didn't look angry. She looked betrayed. Maybe she thought no one would ever stand up. Maybe she believed the system would protect her forever. Maybe she never expected someone like me, an analyst from the back office with a flashlight and a conscience, to bring it all down. But it wasn't over. After the verdict, the real tremors started. 12 staffers from her office resigned within 48 hours. The Department of Housing and Urban Development froze over $900 million in pending grants across the Midwest. A dozen other nonprofits tied to Nurture Nexus began scrubbing their websites, shredding files, disappearing from registries. Congress exploded. Oversight committees were slammed with demands. A special counsel was announced. 2 more names were quietly added to sealed indictments, both senior members of Omar's campaign finance team. And me? I went into witness protection. I don't use my real name anymore. I don't live in Minnesota. I don't trust silence. But I sleep at night. 3 months after the verdict, the sentence came down: Ilhan Omar, 35 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. Rami Hassan, 18 years, reduced for cooperation. The media branded it the scam of the century. A Netflix docuseries was in production before Omar even reached her assigned federal facility in Virginia. Congressional ethics reforms were rushed through the House. Dozens of audits were launched into government grants nationwide. But beneath the media storm, something darker brewed. 2 weeks after sentencing, Levi, my hacker friend who cracked the server, vanished. His apartment was clean. His burner phones disconnected. The only thing left was a sticky note taped to his fridge that said, "There's more." That same day, a locked folder appeared on my secured drive. It had one file inside, a recording. It was a conversation, clearly bugged, between 2 voices. One was unmistakably Rami. The other? A deep voice, calm, careful. Referred to only as director. Director, if she falls, we contain it. The others stay quiet. Rami, and the money? Director, it's already moving. She was a pawn. You were a tool. The game continues. I listened to it 5 times. Ilhan Omar wasn't the top. She was a node in a network, something bigger, older, and still untouched. Nexus was one face of the operation. There were more. Nonprofits in Detroit, Chicago, Portland. A mirrored shell corporation in London. Swiss accounts. Offshore trusts in Belize. Billions, yes, billions, in federal grants potentially siphoned off over a decade. I thought I had closed the book. I was wrong. This wasn't the end. It was just the opening chapter of something far larger, a web of corruption so embedded, so insulated, that one conviction only scratched the surface. So now, I write. Quietly. Carefully. I follow the money. I trace the names. Because if they think I'll stop at exposing Ilhan Omar, they don't know Pam Bondi. And next time, I won't knock. I shouldn't have opened the file. But I did. And now I can't stop. After hearing the voice of the director in that recorded call, I began hunting again, deeper than before. I knew Levi left that file for me, hidden behind 4 levels of encryption. That meant he knew. He saw the rest of the iceberg. And if he was gone now, it wasn't by choice. The signal came 3 days later. An anonymous email. No text. Just an attachment. A single image, a satellite photo of a coastline. In the bottom corner, 2 words in glitchy font, "Trapdoor." I ran it through Levi's old tools. There was a GPS watermark buried in the pixels, coordinates that pointed to an unregistered data center off the coast of Maine, buried beneath what used to be a Cold War naval monitoring station. Decommissioned, supposedly. I didn't trust anyone to go with me. I drove up in an old pickup, stashed the plates before I reached the site, and walked the last 2 miles through frozen brush. It looked abandoned, faded fencing, rusted gates, locked shipping containers scattered like forgotten toys. But Levi had left one last trick, a beacon signal, activated through Bluetooth, pinged as I passed near the largest container. It opened. Inside wasn't gear. It was a door. Reinforced steel. Keypad access. And Levi's failsafe code, one I remembered from a coffee-stained notebook we used in college. Tachyon 83. I punched it in. The door clicked open. The stairs led downward. Cold air. Humidity. Humming servers. And then, a voice, "Pam. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it. Levi had recorded it in advance. He knew the risk. They weren't just moving grant money. They were buying silence. Funding campaigns, suppressing media, even rigging procurement contracts. This goes way past Omar. I've traced the roots to 8 sitting members of Congress, and someone inside the Pentagon. There was a pause. Then one final sentence, they call it the trapdoor protocol. If a piece falls, another takes its place. The money never stops. And if you go after them, they'll come for you. The audio cut out. I stood there, in the dark, surrounded by servers quietly breathing in the shadows, storing the data of something massive. Something alive. This was no longer about Omar. This was about a parallel system inside our own government, corruption dressed as efficiency, protected by complexity. And I was the only one with the map. The data center beneath the main coastline wasn't just a hideout. It was a vault. Levi had created a system of mirror drives, automated backups that tracked financial movements, flagged red flag keywords, and rerouted packets of information in real time to protected servers. The man had basically built a digital landmine, and the moment Ilhan Omar fell, it triggered the rest. Inside, I found a folder labeled, The Blacklist, Verified. It had 8 names. 8 people currently sitting in the highest levels of U.S. government: Senator Clark Emmett, Arkansas, Chair of the Homeland Oversight Committee Representative Lila Chen, California, Infrastructure Funding Board Senator Raymond Hoxley, Ohio, Arms Appropriations Subgroup Representative Felix Moreau, Louisiana, Disaster Relief Funding Chair Senator Dana King, Virginia, Joint Military Contracting Panel Representative Nolan Wade, Florida, Environmental Justice Caucus Senator Abigail Rourke, Colorado, International Aid Oversight Representative Glenn Beall, Texas, Transportation Oversight Liaison. Each name was tied to a codename. Not political nicknames, operational call signs. Atlas, Viola, Ashmark, Meridian, Thresh, Echo Violet, Gale, Zeroed. These weren't politicians. They were assets. Levi had discovered that each had personally signed off on over $40 million in misappropriated funds over a span of 5 years, funneled through dummy projects that mimicked real government initiatives. Clean paper trails. Manufactured oversight. They were laundering corruption through bureaucracy. But the kicker? Each of the 8 was connected by encrypted communications to a single terminal, hidden in a defense subcontractor in Northern Virginia, registered under the alias, Crown Sentinel Group. A shell. I tried to breach it. Within seconds, my signal was pinged. 5 minutes later, a warning message hit my burner phone: "You're not authorized to see the endgame. Back off." Zeroed. They knew I had the files. And now I knew their names. That night, someone tried to force my motel door open. They left when they heard my recorder click on, but the message was clear: I was on a timer. This wasn't about whistleblowing anymore. It was war. The phrase, Crown Sentinel Group, didn't exist on any public registry. But Levi had already cracked part of their facade before he vanished. Through layers of obfuscation and dead-end LLCs, he linked Crown Sentinel to one building, a corporate tower in Reston, Virginia, officially registered to a defense analytics firm called North Atlas Metrics. Their motto: precision, policy, power. It was the kind of slogan that meant nothing, and everything. I knew I had one shot. I disguised myself as a courier, cheap uniform, fake badge, and a delivery manifest forged from a real shipment scanned from the loading dock's cameras. I carried an empty case padded with a Faraday line drive and a covert RFID skimmer inside. The plan: get in, get access, get out. I was buzzed through 2 checkpoints. No metal detectors. No facial scans. Crown Sentinel was confident. Dangerous people usually are. Their office was sleek. Cold. Almost sterile. A large glass wall displayed a real-time map of public project flows across the U.S., everything from disaster aid to cybersecurity spending. But it wasn't data meant for oversight. It was extraction mapping. A male voice passed behind me, casual, too calm for the setting. Ohio's ready for lift. Move the Meridian accounts by Monday. Meridian. One of the 8. I kept moving. When I reached the server corridor, I slipped the skimmer against the access panel and prayed the cloned signal from Levi's files would hold. Green light. Access granted. Inside, I plugged in the Faraday drive. Within seconds, it began downloading raw contract ledgers, encrypted comms, payment chains. And then. Red light. The door behind me hissed shut. An overhead speaker crackled. Pamela Bodi. You've officially crossed the line. My heart stopped. We're not the enemy. We're the safeguard. This country needs order. You're tampering with a system that prevents chaos. I spoke out loud, knowing I was being watched. You're bleeding the system. You're selling silence. That's not order, that's treason. There was a pause. You have no idea how many people we've stopped. You're focusing on what we take. You're ignoring what we protect. I grabbed the drive. Ran. Alarms didn't sound. No one stopped me on the way out. That was the most terrifying part, they let me leave. They wanted me to know they were watching. Back in my safe house, I decrypted the drive. Hidden in the metadata of a procurement file was one final name, Directive 0, Marston, DoD Liaison, top-level clearance, current location, classified. There was someone above the 8. A handler. Possibly the creator of the entire trapdoor protocol. And if I was going to finish this, I'd have to find Marston. Marston wasn't a name you found online. He didn't have a biography. No LinkedIn profile. No congressional testimony. He was a phantom, a man so deep inside the machine he didn't need to exist publicly. But ghosts leave traces. Levi had tagged a series of internal memos buried in Crown Sentinel's system. They were all signed M. No title. Just a command line, a timestamp, and a location stamp, Razor 5, cleared/level 9 access. Razor 5 wasn't a facility. It was a flight path. Using air traffic logs buried under Department of Defense flight codes, I found the pattern. Twice a month, an unregistered Gulfstream jet departed from Langley, VA and landed on a private airstrip in Sitka, Alaska. Every time, it was tagged as a weather surveillance mission. But the tail number? It belonged to a front company tied to Crown Sentinel's deepest shell firm. Marston was in Alaska. I packed light, thermal gear, burner drives, signal jammer, and an encrypted sat beacon. I flew commercial to Anchorage, rented a rusted Jeep under a false name, and drove the coastline in silence. Sitka wasn't just remote. It was shielded. And on the third night, parked outside a shuttered ranger station, I saw it, a convoy of black Suburbans moving in formation down a restricted trail. No lights. No plates. I followed them. They stopped at a gate built into a rock face. After they passed, I hiked up the side ridge and watched from elevation. What I saw chilled me. It wasn't a bunker. It was a command center, carved into the mountain, disguised beneath a fake weather monitoring outpost. And stamped on the armored doors was a logo I'd seen once before, back in the main data center, Delta 0, Directive 0. This was the core. And Marston was inside. I sent the beacon live. The drive I had extracted from Crown Sentinel's server was programmed to auto-dump onto a mirror server, scheduled to go public in 72 hours unless I manually stopped it. It was my insurance policy. If I didn't walk out of that mountain, the rest of the world would know everything. And I wasn't backing down. I descended under the cover of snowfall. 2 guards. Thermal cameras. Old-school defenses. They were expecting drones, not a pissed-off analyst with a purpose. I breached the perimeter using Levi's signal scrambler, slipped inside the maintenance tunnel, and found the inner core. Past the first corridor, I entered a steel chamber lined with fiber-optic cables and red ambient lighting. And there, standing alone in front of a vertical command console, was him. Marston. Tall. Silver hair. Calm. Dressed like a man who didn't need to wear rank. He turned without fear. "Ms. Bodi. I was wondering when you'd find me." Marston didn't blink. He looked at me like he was staring through a microscope, like he already knew the angle I'd take, the words I'd use, maybe even how I'd die if things didn't go his way. "You should feel proud," he said, voice calm, measured. "You made it farther than most. But you don't understand what you're standing in." I didn't respond. My hand hovered near the dead man's switch in my pocket, the trigger that would release everything if I stopped pressing it. Every file. Every name. Every buried dollar. Straight into the light. "You think this is about money?" Marston asked. "About politics?" "No. It's about survival. Nations don't run on honesty, Ms. Bodi. They run on containment. On control." I stepped closer. "You hijacked billions of taxpayer dollars to build a shadow network. You manipulated elected officials. You silenced witnesses. And you call that control?" His lips curled. "We've prevented 6 economic collapses, 4 foreign coups, and 2 civil wars in the last decade, all funded through operations like Nexus. Ilhan Omar was a loose thread. That's all. A failed asset. You think you've unraveled something. You haven't even scratched the fabric." He turned back to the console, hands behind his back. "Walk away. Say nothing. I'll see that you're given a new life, clean, safe, comfortable. You earned that much." I didn't move. "And Levi?" I asked. He finally looked shaken. "Just a flicker. He made his choice. You still have time." I took one step forward. Just one. "The files are set to auto-leak, every account. Every tie-in to defense contracts, political campaigns, offshore laundering. You can shut down one site. You can't stop all the mirrors." His eyes narrowed. "You'd bring the system down just to make a point?" "No," I said. "To give people a fighting chance." A soft beep echoed from my pocket. Countdown engaged, 10 seconds. I turned and ran, sprinting down the tunnel. Shouts rang out. Doors slammed. Sirens flashed red behind me. But the signal went out. The file dump hit 12 independent servers, triggering a chain reaction across the net. Journalists. Lawmakers. International watchdogs. Anonymous groups. Every dark secret of Crown Sentinel, Trapdoor, and Directive Zero, live. The fallout came fast. By the end of the week, 3 sitting members of Congress resigned under sealed investigation. 1 defense contractor CEO vanished offshore. The director of the Office of Federal Grants was arrested trying to flee the country. A special prosecutor was appointed by emergency order. And Marston? Gone. His facility in Sitka, burned to the ground. Black smoke. No survivors reported. But I don't believe he's dead. Somewhere, he's watching. Waiting. Rebuilding. So I stay moving. Quiet. Careful. Every day, I get new messages, people coming forward, connecting dots, joining the resistance behind the curtain. Because the war isn't over. But now, everyone knows it exists. And as long as I'm breathing, I'll keep exposing the system, one piece at a time.